item 12, and I'm going to just while Jacques Councillor Darby. Just while Jacques and the team make their way up, I'm actually just going to ask Councillor Darby, who very kindly chaired the working party or the small panel on this, along with Councillor Cashmore and Councillor Webster, to just make some introductory remarks.
Councillor Quacks.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
That's
Sorry,
right.
distracted. Chair, we will hear from the team, but I'm happy to move recommendations A to D. If I have a second.
I will second that.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. And just brief introduction. Future urban land supply strategy. Last we, hopefully, if this is passed, we have one. It's been rather ad hoc to date, and this is a strategy to avoid the ad hoc manner in which the edges of Auckland have splattered and sprawled over the decades. Noting this is a strategy that's its first decade is in 2012, takes into account the SHAs up in the northwest and the south, and anticipates some 90 to 110,000 dwelling units approximately, and also it's not just about dwelling units, it's also about employment. So it's some 50,000 jobs and $17 billion in bulk infrastructure. A phenomenal number, and something that this council is, and government, together with government, we're going to have to get our heads around. I was chair of the deliberations panel, but I wasn't doing that alone, of course, and I thank Member Wilcox from the IMSB. Always good contributions from Member Wilcox, Councillors Quacks and Councillors Webster and Cashmore, and we landed this one, I can safely say, looking around, unanimously. We went out to 4 locations with community engagement. We went up to Warkworth, we went to Drury, we went, I think, then we went to Derry Flat or out to Waimalku. I'm not sure which order it was, it seems so vague now. We had 4 degrees on a night in Drury, seems a long while back. We had great turnout, high level of engagement, and I'd like to thank not just those members for participating, but also the local boards, particularly Rodney, Upper Harbour, Franklin and Papakura. Might have missed some there, but the chairs in particular, but all the local board members who turned out. We had a terrific turnout, but big turnout in our responding to the new way we're doing engagement from the community. We had solid halls. We had, and our last one there, I think up in Derry Flat, it was a miserable night. It was one of those, you know, you're waiting for the sleet to come in, and I think it was 4 degrees, and it was probably about 5 degrees inside the hall, but no one was going home. I'm comfortable that we've landed this with really good local board input. We had local board briefings on the 15th of July, reports to them in July and August. The panel was convened, the panel itself convened after hearing input on 23rd of September and 7th of October. We had the Auckland Development Committee workshop on 13th of October, and that was with local board chairs. The feedback from the Auckland Development Committee workshop, I think, generally reinforced the views of the community and the councillors and Member Wilcox who sat in deliberation. Key changes following the draft are sequencing. Critical to this work is sequencing, and there are some sequencing changes around Karaka and Puhinui. I think members are abreast of the Puhinui decision. We've added a section on scale and growth. We've reinforced the need for structure planning, and that's something that the community came to us very strongly with. And we've reinforced the need for community engagement, constant community engagement going forward in the new manner as opposed to the old statutory way. There's a lot more info in this strategy on costs and funding of the bulk infrastructure of $17 billion over time. And there is a very strong section on monitoring, and that monitoring is going to have to be ongoing to alleviate the risk of falling back into those old patterns of ad hoc release of land. So The recommendations before you are brought to you by the panel, my colleagues, unanimously. And I'd also like to just close in thanking the head of the team, Jacques Victor, and Dawn Mackay, Amanda Harlan, and this man here, who's been doing lots of work, Stephanie Jowett, and also Watercare, AT, Auckland Transport, Stormwater, NZTA have been at our deliberations, community facilities and open space. It's been an all-in effort, and I am very confident, as are my colleagues who sat round on the deliberations, that we can move forward and adopt this and have a strategy for the controlled lease of land going out to 2041.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Darby. I'm not too sure if the team have anything to add, but maybe we just take questions. It's a good piece of work. I'll just check with the team. You happy just to take questions?
Madam
Happy to
Chair.
take questions. Thank you.
Marvellous.
Madam
Councillor
Chair, I'd
Quacks.
certainly like to speak.
I've got Councillor Quacks, Councillor Philippine, Councillor Webster.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I want to echo some of the comments that have been made by Councillor Darby, and in particular, thank the staff for the dedication and hard work that they've put into this, coming out, as Councillor Darby has pointed out, to cold halls in the middle of winter, and being dedicated to the task. Also want to acknowledge the work of the panel themselves. Councillor Cashmore travelled up and down the length of the North Island to get to these, it seemed. And Chair Darby for chairing the committee, or chairing the deliberations panel. And I will just say that I will support all the recommendations apart from C. And I thought I'd made it quite clear right throughout that I was concerned the amount of land being released under this strategy is not enough to accommodate the future growth of Auckland. This is based on the long-debated 70-40 strategy, and the 70% of the population will be accommodated in the 2010 MUL. It's becoming more and more apparent, even though we've been told back in 2011, but it's becoming more and more apparent that the ability to accommodate the 280,000 dwellings within the 2010 MUL is not realisable. It won't happen. I think I can't put it any clearer than that. That means, of course, that the population has to be accommodated elsewhere. And I think that we should have released more land for future urban use. There's been a lot made of the fact that this is the size, what we're releasing is the size of Hamilton. And that's all very well. But we're actually looking to accommodate a much, much larger population within this new future urban area than the population of Hamilton. So we're actually increasing the size of the urban area by 20%, but increasing the population by 70%. And so something has got to give. And what is happening is we continue to send a signal to the market that land supply in Auckland will continue to be in short supply. And that can only have, well, I was going to say, can only have one consequence, and that consequence would be a continuing price rise. And we've seen property valuations, market property valuations in the last 12 months increase by 25%. And that will continue. And I was going to say, well, that's the only consequence. No, it's not the only consequence. The consequence of those continuing price rises will be the journey of Auckland into the future. And that journey is now a city of landed gentry and the non-landed people. We're going back to the
Councillor,
almost...
I know.
I know
we've
that you'd like to
traversed this.
interrupt, Madam
No,
Chair, but if you've got a
Councillor,
point of order,
no,
please.
Councillor,
Is there a point of
well,
order?
the point of order is that you have exceeded your speaking time, but I was just going to say, if you contain your comment,
Madam Chair, I move extension time.
Second.
I'm just,
She was going to give you some more time.
I was
I think.
actually just going to say, if you contain your comments to the issue in hand, we are straying a little bit, and the other point of order is material that is not relevant to the item under discussion. If you contain your comments to the recommendations and not traverse issues that we have spent hours and hours and hours and hours around this table debating, not the least of which being the upzoning debate. So, Councillor, if you'd like to
Well,
close off.
Madam Chair, you may not wish to hear the journey that Auckland is on, and that has continued, is that we are a city now where 50% of people do not own their own home. And I remind you that the Auckland plan, at the very worst, said we should aim for a home ownership of 54%. Well, we've fallen well below that already. And in addition to that, there are social consequences. And those social consequences, as we know, are poor health, third world diseases, poor education outcome, and the inability of people to be able to get themselves onto that ladder of wealth creation that is home ownership. We are denying people of that, and I think we would have been better had we sent a signal to the people of Auckland that we are actually taking seriously the undersupply of land for urban development. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Question is around Puhunui. I know that Anne and the team went to the Otara and Papatui local board workshop. I didn't want to stay because I thought it was more important that everything gets relayed to the local board, so that's why I left before you guys came in. So, reading the local board feedback and around Puhunui, knowing that it's in decade 2, are there any other, were there any questions raised from the local board that needs to be included in this report and issues? I know they spoke to me around obviously coming in at the last minute and the lack of consultation around it and with the community, but I don't know whether there's anything in this in the local board input, because there's nothing in here from that particular meeting.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe there were no additional issues raised at that meeting. The team explained the reasons why Puhunui was added to the strategy, and our understanding was that that everyone was comfortable with that approach.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Filipaina. Councillor Webster.
Yes, one very quick question, then I'll make some comments. Jacques, my understanding is the concerns that Councillor Quacks, who's been very consistent in his concerns, raises. We can review this at any stage in the future.
Through the chair, yes, of course we can. I suppose the key point that Councillor Quacks is making is, in his words, that we should have released more land. That, of course, is a completely separate process. This strategy does not have the scope to do that. It can't do that. That is a unitary plan process. Whatever comes out of there, the strategy is very clear that whatever comes out of the unitary plan process at the end of the independent hearings panel's recommendations, in terms of what it does around the rub, that the strategy will be updated to reflect that, because it follows what comes out of there. But then, of course, there are all kinds of processes thereafter in the future that the council may or may not decide to undertake. But this strategy simply can't do that.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I was probably a bit quick to second this, because really it should be Councillor Cashmore. As the Chair so rightly said, he's the one that went to all the Have Your Say meetings, drove up and down the motorway, understands the north now. I unfortunately didn't get to any of those. Now. But, you know, having a car that drives itself probably helps, and a big one as well. But can I mean, this was a very good strategy. I think it does bode well for the future, but my real concern is we talk about efficiencies and cutting budgets and too many staff and all this sort of thing. As Councillor Darby so rightly said, most of the meetings, and I didn't need to go because I know that I've heard it many, many times, people are saying we need area or structure plans, whatever we're going to call them now, big ones, for areas of the south and the north, for the Walkwiths, for the Kumeu Huapais, for the south. Because, and I know that we cut some huge budgets out of the planning department a few years ago, and I know that people like Warren McLennan, who gets hassled every time he goes to a meeting in any area of the north, has to say, look, I just haven't got the budget for it. And, you know, it's all very well to do this strategy, but those structure plans are also extremely important, because we're getting a huge amount of pressure from areas in the north, I know particularly, and we all know in the northwest, people trying to jump the gun, going for SHAs so that they can somehow get over the line, going outside the rural-urban boundary. And it is important, and I know that we talk about affordability of houses in Auckland, and somehow we're going